The Mario series used to be something that everyone knew about. If you played games, that meant that you also knew about Mario. It was a rare thing to find someone who had a problem with Mario in those days, and even the Sega guys were careful not to throw stones. Mario was the Beatles of video games. That is to say, early Mario is the Beatles of video games. And if Mario in the 80s and early 90s was the Beatles, then the Disneyized, overly referential entries like New Super Mario Bros. Wii is Paul McCartney and the Wings. Still good, but overly safe, a little bland. Can't hate it, hard to love it. The Mario series is still good today, but it is no longer vital. It is no longer the shiny beacon of progress, the unmistakable king, the titan above all. But, for a time, Mario was it. Mario set the standard for quality, craftsmanship, and polish. Then, when everyone else had caught up, they one-upped themselves and brought everything to the next level. Mario did this 4 times over 3 generations. I call this streak of brilliance, hitherto unrepeated, and likely to remain unrepeated, the golden arc of Mario. Those Mario games which each defined a generation. Well, a gaming generation, which is like 5 years. Anyway, I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. 1, Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and Super Mario 64. There are some Marios missing in there, but we will attend to them in due course. But first, let's go back to the 80s. 1981 to be exact. This is the year Donkey Kong debuted at the arcades. This is the first game with Mario, but at the time they called him Jumpman because mainly he jumped. Donkey Kong is a pillar of arcade history. It's a game that propelled Nintendo to a top-tier games publisher, and it's the debut of Mario. It was a top arcade game during its time, and it's a great arcade game. But it was just that, a great arcade game. It added to the conversation. It didn't spawn its own genre, although it did get a few sequels. But the game is so simple that it is a completely contained experience. The sequels had to change their gameplay because no one would want to play Donkey Kong 2 if it was just the same thing that they had already played. At the same time, it is not in Nintendo's culture to do such a thing. They joined an exclusive club with Namco, Sega, and Konami, to name a few, and they were on the cutting edge of arcade games. And in 1981, arcade games were the biggest show in town. The Atari 2600 and other early proto-consoles existed, but they did not offer an experience that nearly rivaled arcade platforms. However, the video games crash of 1983 put those early consoles' survival in doubt. That's a slightly different topic, but some other things happened in 1983. First, Mario Bros. Came out. This game, honestly, I hate, but it is an arcade game, and those were different times. It did solidify Mario as Mario, Luigi as Luigi, and both of them as plumbers. A sort of one-screen spin-off of Donkey Kong, it was a consistent product. A new set of rules, a new setting, more details into the universe of Mario. From here, Mario would serve as a kind of main character for Nintendo. Being the star of their most famous game in Donkey Kong, he was also the frontman for tennis, pinball, golf, and various Game & Watch games. The other thing that happened in 1983 was the release of the Family Computer, or Famicom, the Japanese version of the NES. This was a giant move for Nintendo, an immense risk that I think we all know ended up paying off in the end. The 1983 suite of games included ports of both Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., giving Mario a home and Nintendo a face. The NES would not release in the US until 1985, but when it releases, it's going to have a game which is not an arcade port. This game is going to be the reason to own an NES, and subsequently, this game is going to become synonymous with video games themselves. Can you guess? Super Mario Bros. The first timeless game. The platformer that rang around the world. 8 worlds, 4 levels each, rescue the princess, get power-ups, find the warp zone. It had everything. It did not come out of nowhere, but it perfectly synthesized everything that had come before it, right at the time that console gaming was exiting its infancy. It's immediately comprehensible. If you've never played a video game before, you can always start with Mario. But anyway, how did we get here? Super Mario 1 is not the first scrolling platformer, but it certainly wasn't the dominant genre in a field with sports games, scrolling shooters, and single-screen games. It took the technology that already existed and was implemented in games like Jump Bug and added a compelling puzzle element. That is to say, by combining control that was responsive, tight, and effective, with an environment which was detailed, beautiful, and easily traversable, the question changed from, can I get to the end of the level before my quarters are gone? To, how am I going to get through this level with all the options that I have? Simply traversing the world of Super Mario Bros. Was fun, and with that, the magic of platformers was born. There are 6 different types of levels in Mario 1. Overworld, Mushroom World, Underwater, Underground, Bridge, and Castle. They are perfectly spaced, and each levels up the ante just a little more than the last. If you play straight through, you'll see the developers introducing new challenges over time, until it all comes to a head in World 8. If you warp straight there, you're going to have a rough going at it. And as we talk about challenges being introduced, the original Mario is a sort of masterclass of level design. Nearly every level has something going on, from the Lakitu in 4.1, to the maze pathways of 4.4, or the bullet bills in 5.3. A simple set of building blocks could be reorganized infinitely. Placements of Koopas and Goombas and blocks could change a straightforward jump into a tricky situation that would cause you to rethink your plan of attack. The game is difficult, but it rewards practice. If I had to guess, I would say that about 25% of people who have played Super Mario Bros. Have ever beaten it. Honestly, I've never beaten it. I've gotten to the last level, but I haven't sealed the deal. The World 8 Gauntlet is still hard, and the last level is one of the hardest segments of the NES era. A huge maze of fireballs that I think was solved in large part by word of mouth. In fact, a large part of the allure of Mario was the result of sharing secrets between players. Consider this hidden mushroom in World 1-1. Do you remember coming across it by yourself? Or did someone tell you? Or do you remember the first time you saw someone run across the ceiling to the warp zone in 1-2? The secrets are what kept people coming back. Xevious, an older arcade game, was also famous for its secrets, which caused it to be a topic of conversation outside of the game, albeit mostly in Japan. It grew a life of its own, and developers realized that players were not looking for just one thing from video games. Heck, video games were barely a decade old. No one knew what gamers wanted. But Mario included a myriad of warps, hidden pipes, and hidden one-ups throughout the game. It tapped into the curiosity of adults and children alike. It made Mario not just a game, but a kind of entity, an experience. But it is kind of difficult. To the modern player, I think the main drawback is the system of momentum, where controlling Mario is like driving a car that continues to drift for quite some time after you let go of the right button on the D-pad. But it's always a game that was fair. Anyone who's played NES games knows that games can cheat. Enemies will not register attacks on them, moving platforms will sometimes dump you off of them, or any number of examples of the game simply not working, leading to frustration and spite. But Super Mario Bros., one of the very first games available on the NES, ran perfectly. If you died by cutting too close to a piranha plant, you died the same way if you did it again. A perfectly ordered universe. It was fun. It had cohesion. A beginning, a middle, and an end. And gamers responded to it. Released at the perfect time with the perfect offering, Mario was the first death knell for the arcade industry, as players were able to play and master a game without fear of running out of quarters. And what's remarkable is not that it did one of these things. The remarkable thing is that Mario 1 did all of these things right out of the gate. There was not a proto-Mario with only one level type, or a Mario without secrets, or a Mario with crappy control. They brought it all out and changed the industry. If another developer wanted to compete, they were going to have to provide a game experience that could compare, because every NES player already had their hands on Super Mario Bros. And further, if another company wanted to make a console, they were going to have to deal with the fact that Mario would not be on it. Super Mario Bros., although partly due to being a pack-in game, was the best-selling game on the NES, and still the 6th best-selling game of all time. Smelling blood in the water, Nintendo immediately pumped out Super Mario Bros. 2 in 1986, which was essentially a level pack for Super Mario Bros. 1. It introduced poison mushrooms, differentiated the control of Mario and Luigi, and iterated upon the level concepts of Mario 1. It is not a pivotal game, and I don't include it in the ARC, although I suppose you could argue combining Mario 1 and 2 into one entry. But anyway, as you probably know, Super Mario Bros. 2 was not released in the US because Nintendo of America had thought it was too hard. The game is hard, but the decision now feels a bit off. What they ended up doing is also completely baffling when looked at objectively, but I suppose it worked out in the end. Doki Doki Panic was another game by Nintendo, so they decided to adapt that game by adding Mario characters to it and releasing it in the US in 1988. I'm not going to trash on the American Mario 2, but it does not share a genealogy with the other mainline Mario games. I think it is good, and added significantly to the mythos by adding so many new character types, and definitely gave American players the sense that you never know what'll come next in regards to Mario. But I think it is more of a lateral step, in much the same way that Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island is. By all accounts, they're great games, but it's not the next step in gaming, not breaking down the windows and shaking the house. But the release of Mario 2 in the States introduced some confusion. The US release of Mario 2 was in 1988. In Japan, that was the year of the release of Super Mario Bros. 3. As a result, they waited until 1990 to release Super Mario Bros. 3 in the US, which is the same year that Super Mario World was released. It seems so overly complicated. Of course, everything worked out fine, and most of us were not even alive at the time, but I didn't realize that the timeline went quite like that, and it just seems like the wrong move. But Super Mario Bros. 3? Oh man. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a true powerhouse, taking every aspect of the original game and improving on it in ways that are both technically masterful and inventively entertaining. It's hard to imagine that Mario 1 and 3 were released within the same generation, and looking at them side by side reveals the strides and jumps achieved by the video game industry itself in that short time. Whereas Mario 1 was almost abstract, a metaphor, a suggestion of a world, an impressionistic jaunt, Mario 3 is fleshed out, thematic, confident, dreamlike, cohesive, in place, and out of time. Mario 3's worlds actually had personality, separated by enemy types, music, and landscape. The levels had rhythm. Some were linear and straightforward, while others were puzzle levels. But even seemingly run-of-the-mill stages contained secret coin areas if a player was dedicated enough to search for them. The first thing that Mario 3 does to really smack you in the face and tell you that things are going to be different is in the first level when they give you the raccoon tail. That first descent feels like the guardrails have come off, and now we truly have freedom to explore. And that verticality fundamentally alters both level design and atmosphere, not to mention at least doubling the usable space in outdoor levels. The other power-ups and items in Mario 3 are one of its key characteristics, which were not repeated in the mainline Mario games for some time. Rare power-up suits like the Hammer Brothers suit, Frog suit, and the Tanuki suit were implemented in ways that made them feel really special. They were extremely powerful, lots of fun, but not farmable. Only a few were available in each playthrough. It has this fleeting quality that also shows a lot of restraint. I will admit I did not like this particular feature of the game for most of my life, because like many, I just wanted to run through the game and blast everyone with the Hammer Brothers suit. But all these years later, it still feels unique and fun to throw on the Hammer suit or get in the Frog suit just before a water level. There are also items that you can hold in your inventory, like mushrooms and fire flowers, and other utility items, such as the cloud or music box. Given the scale of the worlds and levels, these items offered players options when progressing, and gave an out to people who found themselves on the wrong end of a particular scrolling level, for example. But further than that, it gave a sense of depth and content. That's right, it gave a sense of content because the items are literally content. It provided variance among playthroughs. It rewarded players for forgoing the warps, and just gave a sense of epic adventure to have 3 pages of items at your disposal. Speaking of adventure, I don't think any Mario game was ever able to delineate their worlds and give them special character as Mario 3. Design choices, native enemies, and unique map elements all combine to give each world a sense of space in the game's universe. World 1 is the intro. It's pure Mario 3. World 2 is desert, pyramids, the sun. World 3, water, frog suit, big fish. World 4, big things, small things. World 5, 2 parts, ground and sky. 6, ice, ice, sliding on ice. World 7, the piranha plant world, a labyrinthine final standard world. And 8, tanks, hands, hard levels. And the levels were great. Straightforward levels, maze levels, puzzle levels, multiple routes, vertical levels. In many ways it took platforming to its natural conclusion. Precision and variety, atmosphere, and reward for effort. Mario 1 was brutal in its simplicity, but Mario 3 was a slower build-up and gave players more options to overcome the challenges of the game. The raccoon tail allowed you to fly over most of the level, or meticulously control the descent of every jump you made if you wanted. That doesn't work in every level, but it resulted in a smoother difficulty curve. And then there are the little secrets and just things to discover in the game. Many people know about the 2 warp whistles in World 1. Right at the beginning, you have access to any world you want. Playing Mario 3 straight through is the best way to play, of course. But did you know that there's also a warp whistle in World 2? I didn't. I had to look it up just now. It's behind the hammer block. There's also white mushroom houses. I didn't even know about this until I was an adult and my friend told me. There was one level in each world where, if you collect a certain number of coins, you get access to a special mushroom house with a P-wing or an anchor item. Treasure ships, which have really wonky mathematical requirements to trigger in place of Hammer Brothers, is also a thing I did not discover until much later. But Mario 3. The remarkable thing, again, is not that it did any of these things. Like Mario 1, it's the fact that it did all of these things at once, creating a classic game that clearly outmatched its peers, and in many ways remains unmatched today. Among NES games, it's probably the most developed and most fully formed. But the NES era ended eventually. In fact, not long after the release of Mario 3, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was released, and with it, a pack-in game that would again push platforming, would again make the current Nintendo console the king of the generation, and would again establish Mario as the mascot of all video games everywhere. Super Mario World. Each of these Mario games has the remarkable quality of never being just an iteration, but always being a full evolution. The intermediary steps are skipped. Features and mechanics are not introduced one by one and tested, but instead everything is overhauled at once, and every facet of the game is considered and advanced. You could look at Super Mario World and say it improved upon Mario 3 in every way. In some ways, yes, but in some ways it is just the natural next step, not positive or negative. But when we look at Super Mario World, I think we should keep 2 things in mind. First, that it is the next Mario game, the successor of Mario 3, a game which shares with it as much DNA as 2 siblings, and they were both in development at the same time. The second thing it is it's the flagship game for the new Super NES. It is showing off the technical capabilities of the console and setting the standard for games development on this new frontier. Keeping these 2 things in mind, the music quality, graphics, scaling effects, sprite emotion, and other graphical features are the domain of the fact that it's on the Super NES. And these things, no doubt, contributed to its longevity and made the game absolutely mind-blowing upon its initial release, but have less relevance in the current era. It's worth noting, but it's not why we are talking about Mario World today. The introduction of Yoshi, first of all, is huge. Being on the cover, Yoshi is sort of the symbol for Mario World, the big thing that could have never been imagined on the NES. Not only does he come in a variety of colors which each have unique properties, but he also provides a source of defense for players, as Yoshi can take 1 hit before running away, and then can be remounted. And the additional Yoshis were not even something you would expect, since the introduction of the original Yoshi is really enough as it is. But we're starting to see a pattern here. The golden arc of Mario games always look 1 or 2 steps ahead and do everything at once. And in addition to Yoshi, a spin move was added to break blocks, the Feather Cape, which is a supercharged raccoon tail, unique castles instead of Bowser ships, and ghost castles are added. And this is all with tight controls in a much more vibrant setting, although that could be mostly attributable to the Super NES graphical capabilities. And when I say graphics, I don't mean the art design. The art design in Mario World is untenably great. Mario 3 had great design as well, but Mario 3 had design that was disparate but familiar. It covered a lot of ground and had personality, but it was made of familiar building blocks. Mario World, on the other hand, was able to give a sense of universe, a feeling that everything is pointed towards a unified aesthetic. If a lost World 9 was discovered, a player of Mario World would be able to tell immediately whether it was part of that shared vision. Motifs like stars and mountains run across the whole game. The map itself creates a world that is totally different from Mario 3. It's a whole new adventure. And the map has a few other distinctions from Mario 3, partly due to the fact that Super Mario World has a save system. Yes, it took a change in generation before saving was introduced to the premier platforming franchise. Before, platformers were slightly arcadey, picked up and put down in a single sitting. Even though they have roughly the same number of levels, 90 and 96 respectively, Mario World always feels much bigger since you are encouraged to spread it out over a longer period of time. Additionally, you can revisit levels in Mario World to find new exits, get power-ups, or just for fun. The map is one of the defining features of this game. An interconnected, persistent map where you can open up new paths and shortcuts as the game progresses. It looks amazing, and having a completed map to traverse is a great feeling. I don't know why the Mario Neo/Rebirth/Reboot/New series chose not to continue this format. The map was also able to kind of visually and intuitively explain the secret system of Mario World. There were basically two objectives on the map which were not normally accessible by normal exits: colored switches and star roads. Some levels have 3 or 4 exits, and it's a fun time to try to find the right one. Some are hard though, including this one, where you have to go under the goalpost in order to find a second, hidden goalpost. The colored switches are a fun mechanic where transparent blocks in past levels will become solid when you get the switch, opening up new paths. But a lot of this could be bypassed with the cape or jumping off Yoshi anyway. So I'd file this under good but not fundamental. The Star Road, on the other hand, is Super Mario World all the way. This is another mechanic where you could get to the last level relatively quickly if you wanted, but that's missing the point. The 5 Star Road levels are all puzzle levels, with the real exit being hidden. Then at the end, you can access the Special World, which is a series of challenge levels. And if you finish that, you get access to one of the greatest secrets in video game history, which is just a change to the world map and the enemy sprites. It sounds simple, but really is one of the most iconic rewards in classic gaming. Gameplay-wise, Mario World takes more advantage of bouncing on enemies, P-blocks, and more complicated castle levels. It feels completely polished, fully formed, and very importantly, it does not feel like a tech demo for the Super NES. It's lucky for Nintendo that they were able to funnel their NES fans into the Super NES by having a fully fledged Mario game ready to go right upon release. If your Super NES came with this game, that might be all you needed. Perhaps no other game you bought would rival Super Mario World in scope and execution. In some ways, Mario 3 and Mario World are both answers to the question of what is a Mario game. I think we all know how the story ends. There was never a platformer Mario that approached what these two games were able to accomplish. There are arguments to be made, but I'm not here to tell them. Mario 3 and Mario World defined their generations. They took risks. Every platformer Mario released in the later generations were iterative, referential, clean, but ultimately came from a different spirit. But Mario dominated controllers and living rooms across the world throughout the 80s and early 90s. The supposed rival in Sonic did not even debut until 1991, a full year after Super Mario World was released. In addition to that, the Genesis beat the Super NES to market, but did not come prepared with a killer launch game and never caught up to the Super NES during their lifetimes. But a sea change was coming to the world of video gamedom: 3D games. The technology began appearing in arcades like Virtua Racing and Virtua Fighter in 1993 and 1994. Sprite-based 2D games were not at the apex of their evolution, but nevertheless, 3D became the next big thing, and all the video game console manufacturers were vying to be the essential console for the next generation. This so-called 5th generation was a mishmash of new entrants, all touting disc-based consoles at different price points. The 3DO, Atari Jaguar, Amiga 32CD, but these consoles were culled by the brutality of the industry. You need to sell consoles to sell games, and you need games to sell consoles. But one new console developer made the right move at the right time. Sony released its PlayStation in 1995, the same year the Sega Saturn was released, but at $100 cheaper. In addition, it came packed with games that were not made for children, games like Tekken, Twisted Metal, and Resident Evil. All these games were released before Nintendo's Nintendo 64 had hit store shelves. It's hard to weigh all the factors involved here, but Sony competed directly against the Saturn, and in the US spelled its doom. Nintendo was not only late to the party, but was offering something altogether different from the PlayStation. It was offering not only a more family-oriented experience, but also something that Sony and Sega and Atari and whoever did not have: first-party games, and especially Mario. Promotional material for the N64 heavily featured a game aptly titled Mario 64. Mario 64 was different from any other game available at the time in a very simple aspect. It was a platformer. Just like the NES was able to wrangle gamers a decade before with the intuitive action gameplay and of exploring a digital world, Mario 64 aimed to do the same thing in the 3D arena. It's really strange how there were no notable platform games yet in the 5th generation, even though the genre completely dominated the 3rd and 4th generations. My guess is that it was considered too hard. A giant risk to take when gamers would eat up anything novel at apparently the same rate. Even Crash Bandicoot did not release until the same time as Mario 64, and I would hardly call that a 3D platformer. But Mario 64 felt 3D. No other game of its time had the same aura. This was it. This is what 3D games are like. The time had come. In Mario 64, players were given new abilities, new jumps and slides to navigate the next dimension for Mario. After a brief little walk to get your feet under you, you are thrust into the first world. A world that seems to persist without you in it. Not exactly hostile, and without a clear goal in mind. Each time you enter a level, you have an objective, but you are free to pursue different stars if you wish. It feels great, the controls work, and jumping across pits feels possible and controllable. The point upon which a platformer lives or dies is your ability to actually jump across platforms. The graphics are simple, blocky, with bright colors. It has visually aged much better than Twisted Metal or Virtua Fighter. The camera is bad, but it took years before anyone got that sorted out. In short, it plays and looks like you would hope, and delivered on a lot of promises. It was not everything that was expected though, and it took a certain direction with its format. Instead of a journey across distance, it was something else. Going into self-contained painting worlds and repeating them for different objectives is a great idea, and it works, but it's not what Mario was doing before. However, it allowed for almost more leeway in creating environments, since you did not have to have a cohesive universe. A level inside a clock, for example, was just that. It didn't need to fabricate a reason for Mario to go inside a clock. There were more than just clocks. Snow levels, water raising levels, big and small levels, mountain levels, and ghost levels. 15 different levels that were expertly designed in 3D space. In this aspect, the heritage of Mario can be found. It is just fun to be Mario, to ascend obstacles, to find out what's inside that door. The difficulty is usually mild, the threats manageable, and the puzzle satisfying. The penguin race, the giant eel, the hidden submarine, or the caterpillar boss are really so simple, but combined to create a huge feeling game that felt tested. It certainly did not feel like it was the first game of its kind, but really it was. The first fully 3D Mario platformer had the control, the vision, the charm, and the secrets too. Discovering hidden stars around the castle, finding the hat power-ups, or exploring every last corner of a level in order to get the star for 100 coins naturally encouraged players to be curious and check around every corner. This in turn showed them the depth and details of each level, which pulls them further into the universe of Mario 64. Finding all 120 stars is an optional weighty task, but that leaves more for players to shoot for. I'm still amazed that it worked like it did, and that they were able to do everything right again. They invented a genre again, and arguably made the best game in that genre on their first try. Perhaps part of their success was the newness of it all, so that entering a lake area with a giant friendly sea monster, for example, had a sense of significance and wonder purely from the spectacle of its ingenuity, even if the gameplay of that area might have been a bit routine. But Mario 64 was the perfect successor for Mario, and it had the same blood as Mario World and Mario 3 and Mario 1. Every game in this golden arc of Mario defined its generation, but it was also riding upon the crest of the generational changes. Mario 1 was coming out of the arcade era and into the console era, defining it, setting the standard, telling the world what console games are. Mario 3 was the culmination of that idea, taking every idea to its conclusion, a full game, a really complete game. Super Mario World was the 16-bit supercharge. Make it bigger, smoother, add this, remove that, add this feature, keep the scope, remember what makes games fun, use everything to make the best game we can. and Mario 64 is the new era. 3D games, everything has changed. What is a game again? Really, it's just level design. The only games that ever outdid the Golden Art games are other Golden Art games. But going into the next generation, the video game industry had grown immensely. The PlayStation had carried with it many of the new greatest games of all time, and platformers were falling out of favor. Games like Banjo-Kazooie or Donkey Kong 64 had helped to give them a home on the N64, but the genre was not exactly in demand. When Super Mario Sunshine released on the GameCube, many were skeptical if it could give players a reason to return to platforming. And while the shifts from the NES to the Super NES to the N64 were each monumental, incomparable, the shift from the N64 to the GameCube was less harsh, seemingly only a matter of graphical fidelity. The technology increase did not provide obvious tools to use to craft the next Mario game, so they went with something else. Credit must be given for refusing to make standard games, but Nintendo's idea to give Mario the Flood, a water pump backpack that talked, may have been too much. I'm not coming out against Mario Sunshine, just like I'm not coming out against Mario 2, but it was not the next step for Mario. It had been 8 years since Mario 64, and there should have been a next Mario game. Ultimately, Sunshine was just the format of Mario 64 with a mechanic pasted on, which should have been a non-Mario game. Also, the town was incredibly tone-deaf. I understand that public opinion has come around on Sunshine in recent years, especially since it's a good speedrun game, but I don't think I'm alone in kind of wondering what was going on with Mario Sunshine. Ultimately, games evolved from platformers by that time. Compared to Metal Gear Solid 3, Resident Evil 4, or Devil May Cry, they seemed kind of eternally retro, unable to ever fully become mainline again. Mario is a platforming series, so I don't expect it to get an inventory system or start a double agent subplot, but I can imagine saying the same thing before Mario 64 came out. It would have been conceivable that platformers would have died with the advent of the 3D era, but Mario was able to revive it, but it couldn't find the magic again. The Mario Galaxy series is great, but again, feels like a niche. All the game design in the world can't change the fact that we're retreading old ground. It's the same with the new Super Mario series. It can't escape its own legacy. To be true to Mario used to be to always reinvent, always push, always evolve. Now being true to Mario is to just be like other Marios. I said before they were not likely to see another streak like the golden age of Mario. The video game industry was young then, and technology moved fast. Now it's different. Mario was a game for everyone who played video games. Now a game for everyone is not possible, but I want to stress how good and confident these games were. The focus and detail put into each game really contributed to where we are today. I would credit Nintendo's dominance for the first 10 years of video games, and relevance in the years after, to the things Mario got right. And we played these games. You can't trick us. You can't throw together a game by committee with no heart and win a console generation. Mario rewarded that test. The deeper you go, the better it gets.